Okay, in this lesson we're going to talk about foreign keys and how they're used to connect tables. In a previous video we set primary key for the cruise line table, and we set that primary key here, and we set the primary key of the ships table, and we set it there. Now if I look at the actual data that's contained in both of these tables, the cruise line table lists 3 cruise lines. The ships table lists 6 ships. Now, every one of these cruise lines has at least one ship and maybe more, and every one of these ships belongs to a cruise line. So there's clearly a relationship brewing between these two tables. The question is how do I actually connect them? How do I go about connecting one table to another? Well, whenever you create a relationship, at least what's called a one-to-many relationship, which is what we're going to be doing right now, you're going to connect the primary key of one table to a foreign key of the other table. So in other words, I'm either going to connect cruise line ID to a field in the ship table, or I'm going to connect ship ID to a field in the cruise line table. In order to do it, I have to have a foreign key field. A foreign key field is nothing more than a primary key from one table that is actually copied and pasted or added to the other table. So for example, in order for me to connect ships to cruise lines, if I was going to use the ship ID field as the primary key and I was going to connect it to a foreign key here, I would actually need to add a new field called ship ID here, so they share that common field that I could then use to join the two. That's one possibility. The other is that I would take cruise line ID from here and add it as a new field in the ships table. So in other words, I'm either going to copy the cruise line ID from here and place it in ships, or I'm going to copy ship ID and place it here in the cruise line. The question is, which one of those do I do? It's one or the other every time that you go to create a foreign key. You're either going to copy the primary key from one table and paste it in the other, or vice versa. And the answer to that question is, if you can look at the two tables and differentiate which one of these tables represents the many side of the relationship versus the one side of the relationship, then you can answer your question. And what I mean by that is this. We said earlier on that every ship or every cruise line can have at least one and possibly multiple ships. And then we also said that every ship belongs to a cruise line. Well, what that means is that if every cruise line can have many ships, then the way that I'm looking at this relationship between these two is that for every one cruise line there are many ships, so one to many, where the ships table is the one that would represent the many side of the relationship. Well, armed with that knowledge, knowing that the ships table is the one that's on the many side of the relationship, that is always the one that's going to get a foreign key placed into it. So that simply means then that I need to be in design view of both tables, and I'm simply going to take the cruise line ID field, and I'm going to get out here on the key field itself, and then I'm just going to go up to the Home tab and choose Copy, and then I'm going to come over to the Ships table, come down here into the first blank row, and I'm going to paste. This will bring in Cruise Line ID. It's a text data type field. Now notice though that it has no duplicates allowed, and that's because I copied it from the primary key position here where duplicates were not allowed, and when I pasted it here it kept that index. So I'm going to change that and allow index to have duplicates. I've now created a foreign key. Again, the biggest thing to get out of this is that if you're looking at two tables and you can decide which side is the one side of the relationship and which is the many side of the relationship, just remember the table that's the many side is always the one that's going to have a foreign key placed into it. And that's going to enable you then to create a relationship, which we will do in the next video.